Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
You bet. Always up for a good mystery.
Well, buckle up, because this one is a doozy. Today, we're going to delve into the life and crimes of Roberto Wagner Fernandes. You might not recognize the name right off the bat.
But by the end of this deep dive, I guarantee you won't forget it.
He's a real-life chameleon, pilot, flight attendant, and, as we'll discover, a convicted killer.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. His story spans continents, with twists and turns that would make even the most seasoned detective's head spin.
We're talking a controversial acquittal, a daring escape, a mysterious plane crash, and a posthumous identification that took place years after his supposed demise.
This one has it all.
So to start, let's set the stage. The year is 1996. Fernandes is living what appears to be a normal life in Londrina, Brazil. He has a wife named Danielle and a 5-year-old daughter.
Yeah, a seemingly ordinary family. But on one fateful day, everything changes.
Neighbors report hearing gunshots. Then Fernandes is seen fleeing the scene with his daughter.
The police are called, and they find Danielle in the apartment. She had been shot multiple times. It was a shocking turn of events, especially for those who knew the couple.
You said they were well-liked.
Oh, yeah. Those who knew them described them as friendly, loving, the kind of neighbors who'd always lend a helping hand. So to hear about this violence, it just didn't make sense.
It's hard to believe someone could go from seemingly normal to that. So what happened next? Fernandes is on the run, right?
Right. But he's eventually caught and put on trial for Danielle's murder.
An open and shut case, you'd think. But it's anything but.
Fernandes claims self-defense. He says that they had a huge argument about infidelity, and that during the fight, Danielle threatened him with a gun.
So it was a he said, she said situation.
Exactly. And to make things even more complicated, a woman comes forward during the trial and accuses Fernandes of assaulting her.
Wait, another assault?
Yeah, she was a prostitute. And her testimony raised questions about whether there was a history of violence that had gone unnoticed. Was this an isolated incident, or was there a pattern of behavior that everyone had missed?
Those are some pretty serious accusations.
Absolutely. But remember, this was back in the 90s. The understanding of domestic violence and patterns of abuse weren't as developed as they are today.
So was there enough evidence to convict him?
Not really. The trial was a mess. Conflicting accounts from witnesses, rumors of drug use by both Fernandes and Danielle, the whole thing was incredibly murky. And in the end, Fernandes was acquitted due to lack of evidence.
Acquitted. Wow. I imagine that didn't sit well with Danielle's family or the community.
You're telling me. It was a hugely controversial verdict. A lot of people felt that justice hadn't been served.
So what did Fernandes do after he walked free?
Well, he didn't stick around to find out what people thought.
What do you mean?
Rumors started spreading that Danielle's family was furious about the acquittal. Some even whispered that they had put a hit out on Fernandes.
A hit. Wow.
Whether it was true or not, Fernandes clearly felt threatened enough to flee Brazil. He packed his bags and headed straight for Miami.
Miami. Interesting choice.
It's a melting pot, a place where someone can disappear into the crowd. Maybe he thought he could start a new life there, escape his past.
You make it sound like a movie.
In a way, it is. And in Miami, Fernandes does indeed start over. He works odd jobs, drives a bus, even becomes a flight attendant.
So he manages to blend in, create a new persona. Case closed, right?
Not even close, because Fernandes has a secret, a dark side that he can't escape, and it's about to catch up with him in a horrifying way.
I have a feeling this is where the story gets really interesting.
Buckle up, because we're about to dive into the heart of the mystery.
Okay, you've got my attention.
So Fernandes is in Miami, living this seemingly normal life, but he also starts frequenting prostitutes.
That's never a good sign.
You're telling me. And between 2000 and 2001, 3 women are found murdered in Miami, all prostitutes.
Okay, this is getting creepy.
Creepy is an understatement.
Let's talk about these murders. Who are the victims?
The first was Kim Dietz-Livesey. Her body was discovered in a suitcase, just abandoned by the side of the road. Imagine that.
It's awful.
Then, a few months later, Sia Dimas, also a prostitute, is found strangled to death. This time, her body was stuffed in a duffel bag.
This is like something out of a horror movie.
And then, in 2001, the body of Jessica Good, another prostitute, is found in Biscayne Bay, stabbed to death.
3 women, all murdered in similar ways. It's hard not to see a connection.
The police certainly did. And they started digging deeper, trying to find a link between the victims. And that's when the name Roberto Wagner Fernandes pops up again.
It can't be a coincidence.
It wasn't. They realized that Fernandes had crossed paths with all three victims.
So they finally had their man.
They thought so. But as they were building their case, getting ready to make an arrest, Fernandes vanished.
He ran.
He fled back to Brazil.
Of course he did. Back to where it all began. And I'm guessing that made things a lot more complicated.
You could say that, because at the time, Brazil had no extradition treaty with the U.S.
So Fernandes was essentially untouchable. Back in his home country, free from prosecution.
It was a huge blow to the investigation. And to make matters worse, while he was back in Brazil, Fernandes became a suspect in other violent crimes, also against prostitutes.
It's like he was taunting the authorities, flaunting his ability to escape justice.
Exactly, and it solidified the belief that he wasn't just a murderer, but a potential serial killer.
This is truly chilling. A man who seemingly had no remorse, who preyed on vulnerable women and managed to evade capture time and time again.
And just when it seemed like the case had gone cold, fate intervened in a way that no one could have predicted. But that's a story for after the break.
So Fernandes is back in Brazil, seemingly beyond the reach of the law. But then, a twist. Fate steps in. Tell me what happened.
It all starts in Paraguay. In 2005, there's a plane crash, and guess who's on the passenger list?
Fernandes.
The one and only.
So he's dead. End of story.
That's what everyone thought. Case closed. Justice, sort of served. But hold on, this is where it's even crazier. Fast forward to 2011. There's a breakthrough in the Miami murder cases.
A breakthrough. 6 years after the guy supposedly dies.
I know, right? Technology had advanced, and investigators were now able to re-examine evidence using new techniques.
Like what?
Fingerprint analysis. They ran Fernandes' fingerprints, which they had on file from his time in the U.S., against those found at the Miami crime scenes. Bingo! They got a match. All three crime scenes, Kim Dietz-Livesey, C. Demas, Jessica Good, Fernandes was undeniably linked to all of them.
Talk about a ghost from the past coming back to haunt you. But if he was dead, how could this be?
Well, dead men don't usually leave fingerprints.
So what happened? Was there a mistake with the plane crash identification?
That was the initial thought. Maybe they had misidentified the body. But to be absolutely sure, they needed more than just fingerprints.
DNA.
You got it. To get a DNA sample, they had to go straight to the source.
The source, you mean?
His grave. They had to exhume Fernandez's body in Brazil.
Wow. That must have been a logistical nightmare.
Oh, absolutely. It was a massive undertaking involving international cooperation, legal hurdles, the whole 9 yards. But they were determined to get to the bottom of this.
So they exhume the body, transport it, run the DNA tests. What happens next?
We'll buckle up again because it took another 10 years to get those DNA results back.
10 years?
Uh-huh.
Seriously?
Yeah, international investigations, they move at a glacial pace sometimes.
But eventually they get the confirmation.
Finally, in 2021, the results came back, and they were conclusive. Roberto Wagner Fernandes was positively identified as the killer of those three women in Miami. Justice, albeit delayed, was finally served.
It's almost unbelievable. A man thought dead for over 15 years is suddenly confirmed as a serial killer.
I know, it's mind-blowing. It really makes you question everything you think you know about a case. But even with this confirmation, there are still so many unanswered questions.
Like what?
Well, for starters, could there be other victims? We know Fernandes was suspected of similar crimes in Brazil. And given his ability to evade capture, it's not a stretch to think there might be more cases out there that were never connected to him.
That's a terrifying thought. And what about his escape from Miami? How did he manage to disappear right when the police were closing in? Did he have inside help? Was he tipped off?
Those are questions that have probably kept the investigators up at night. And even if we could solve those mysteries, there's still the biggest question of all. Why?
Why did he do it?
Exactly. What drove him to commit such horrific acts? Was it a thirst for power? A deep-seated rage? A complete lack of empathy?
These are questions that might never have clear answers.
That's the thing about true crime. Sometimes, even with all the evidence in the world, the human mind remains the biggest mystery of all.
It's a humbling reminder that even in the face of the darkest crimes, we may never fully understand the depths of human depravity. But that doesn't mean we stop searching for answers.
Absolutely. We owe it to the victims, to their families, and to ourselves to keep asking those tough questions, to keep digging for the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be.
And as we conclude this deep dive into the life and crimes of Roberto Wagner Fernandes, we hope you'll join us in that search for understanding. because only by confronting the darkness can we hope to find the light. It really is a case that just keeps you thinking. Like you said, so many unanswered questions.
Right. It's like even with a resolution, it's not really over, not completely.
Yeah, like we talked about, the possibility of more victims in Brazil. That's a chilling thought.
And all the questions surrounding his escape from Miami. I mean, how do you just vanish like that? Right when the cops are closing in?
Maybe he had help. Someone tipped him off.
Hmm.
Or maybe he was just that good. A master manipulator.
It's possible, but even if we figure out how he did it, there's still the biggest question of all. Why?
Why kill? Why those women?
We can speculate all day long. Was it power? Control? Some twisted sense of satisfaction? We may never truly know.
I guess that's the thing about these cases. Sometimes there are no easy answers. The human mind. It's a dark and complex place.
Yeah, some things are just beyond our comprehension. But that doesn't mean we should stop searching for answers.
Exactly. We owe it to the victims, to their families, to everyone to keep asking those tough questions.
And to keep learning, to keep trying to understand, because maybe, just maybe, we can prevent something like this from happening again.
I think that's a great point to end on. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it. And we can use that knowledge to create a better, safer future.
Absolutely. And that's what this deep dive is all about. Raising awareness, sparking conversations, and empowering people to make a difference.
So thank you for joining us on this journey. And remember, even in the face of darkness, there's always hope.